Welcome to the Gravel Lot, the place where bikes are for everyone.
The Gravel Lot podcast is presented by Be Free Ride Bikes Apparel, providing a fully customized cycling apparel experience to provide you and your team the attention to detail and personal touch that you deserve.
And also brought to you by Grimpour Brothers Coffee, offering handmade coffee roasted weekly in small batches to give you the finest quality coffee to start your day. Choose their subscription service and earn your free bag of coffee today.
Also by BioWheels Fit Studio and Workshop in Cincinnati, Ohio, offering you a full host of bike fitting services intended to provide the cycling enthusiast with the most efficient, comfortable, and sustainable bike fit they have ever had.
And by the Ritual All Natural Skincare, providing small batch, handmade chamois cream, custom blended for your team or shop right here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Contact us today to learn more.
And by Hand Up Gloves. Great gear, better times. Providing a wide range of apparel for bikes, snow sports, and golf in multiple designs and fits to let your personality shine.
Our goal with the Gravel Lot is to inspire cyclists of all stripes to ride bikes, share their story, and have fun. We love all bikes and anyone who wants to ride them. So no matter where you sit on the spectrum of bikes, we'll always have a place for you in the Gravel Lot.
And now, the hosts of TGL, John Woolry and Doug McClintock.
Hello and welcome back again to the Gravel Lot, the official podcast for all cyclists. So really, we love storytelling. We love all things cycling. But above all else, TGL is the place where no matter what ride you are on this week, next week, whatever week it is, you will have a home here. I'm John. That's Doug. And we are glad that you guys found us. So welcome to another week of the Gravel Lot podcast.
Yes.
So whether you guys are an existing member of the Gravel Lot, as we refer to you guys as Pebbles. So whether you guys are an existing Pebble or you are new to the show, hello and welcome. Welcome to the Gravel Lot. And if you guys believe in what we're doing, hit the like button, hit the notifications, hit the little bell thingy.
Follow.
Yeah. Subscribe, do all of the things. Share the show with your friends. Talk about bikes. Send us your comments. All that stuff. So let's get into today. Let's do this. And if you guys want to, you can go to thegravellot.com, find all of our content. And if you really want to, you can become one of our most loyal Pebbles and become a Patreon supporter today.
Yeah, becoming a Patreon supporter or a patron, as I believe they are referred to, is real easy. You just sign up and give us a little pittance of the things you bring in whatever endeavor you're in order to help us support making this show. This is how we do this. This is how we keep this thing flowing. This is how we keep new technology, and we make sure everything's coming to your ears nice and crystal clear. So any amount you could leave us, we'd love it. That'd be great. Help us make this thing that we can bring to you, and also help encourage all the things that we are putting out into the world, from Girls Moving Mountains. We've got some other things coming along, Bike Shop Show, some other things that we're helping support with some of those dollars to make things happen. So we'd love to have you. Also, when you become a patron, you can get access to special content that we're making for you, reaction videos, things that's going on. We've got a new piece of equipment that we bought, which is pretty cool, which we use for our Black Fork video. Hopefully we're making some more cool stuff that's just for our patrons. And if you would like, leave us a phone message, call at 513-400-5577 and tell us what's up, or ask us a question and we'll try to address it for our patrons in that space. So do that, or just call and heckle us. I'm good with that.
Yeah, whatever. And kudos to you, Doug. You got that phone number right this week.
Yeah, I've learned it. It's only taken me like a month, maybe
clap.
2. That's okay.
Yeah,
513-400-5577.
Right.
See? I didn't even print it out up here like I was talking about a few weeks
ago. No, it's good. It's good.
So, also please send us all of your recommendations for upcoming guests. If you know somebody who you think would be fabulous on the Gravel
Yes.
Lot, please send them our way. We're looking for people who are diverse and interesting from your communities, that everyone has a story. We'd love to tell their story with them on the show. Send them our way. We'd love to talk to them. With that out of the way, we've got some business we need to deal with, and that is this. This show is a little different, and that is because my dear best friend John will be celebrating his 10-year wedding anniversary, 1 year removed.
10 plus 1.
Right now. So
Right.
John is time traveling.
Yeah. I'm not here now, but I'm here now.
Correct.
I'm not here with you now. I don't know, whatever.
Right. So this is like those radio moments where they're like, this portion has been pre-recorded and will unfortunately not be able to take your phone calls.
Yeah,
that's
but we just
basically what's happening.
But we just told them to send send your phone calls.
Send your phone calls. We can take your phone calls, but we won't be able to answer them live. So any live comments you have here, that's fine. We'll get to the comments.
Yes.
But they're going to be a delay because John is out of town and we are pre-recording with this week's guest. Yes. So this is a rare occurrence, but every once in a while, we need to take some time off for personal and familial obligations, and things that are important to us. So sometimes this will happen, but we know this episode is one that is worth sticking around for. We're very excited to have you and our guest with us this week. So I don't have a whole lot to share with about how my week was. John, you? Because it's been like a day since we recorded.
So full disclosure, this is the night, the evening after we recorded with Adam Rakobinski.
Yeah.
So we're doing back-to-back recordings again to get prepared so I can actually leave. Right now, I am probably enjoying a sunset on the Gulf Coast. But again,
that's lovely.
I'm here with you now. Like, you have my full attention. I am for this. I am here for you. But I'm also on the Gulf Coast enjoying a nice sunset.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
Probably some sort of fruity drink with a hat.
I don't know what I'm doing, but it's a Tuesday and I'm enjoying having it on. So there you go. So we're really excited to have this week's guest joining us. He is a person who does something very similar to what we do, and we're really excited to chat with him. He is, most importantly, I think, a storyteller. He's a photographer, an ambassador for so many awesome brands in the cycling world, but more relevant to our milieu, as it were, he is the host of We Got to Hang Out, which is an awesome podcast that all of you Pebbles should check out.
Yes.
But rather than this turning into us all discussing how to podcast or giving you a manual or complaining about past and future guests and things they do that make audio noises, we will just get right to it, and we're going to let him share his story with you. So with that, Christopher Stricklen, welcome to the Gravel Lot.
Well, thank you for having me. I really think that Pebbles name is like amazing. Was that like was that a natural like evolution?
It was I think it was a user submitted, like really early on, like episode 3 or 4, we started just at like throwing it out there what we should call our listeners, because a lot of larger shows have, or TV followings have kind of names,
Absolutely.
Trekkies, things like that. So we threw it out really early, and within, I was Grant Brushaber, one of our buddies that owns a local bike shop, within like 6 hours, like texted me that night and was like, Pebbles, we're all Pebbles in the Gravel Lot of life. And it's like,
boom,
that's so good. We're done.
Yeah, I need to come up with a thing for my audience, but the first thing that comes to mind is loiterers, which that doesn't really
have a positive ring to it. Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
But you have to workshop that one a little bit. There's a couple focus groups to try to figure that one out.
Yeah.
So we're real excited to have you join us, because you do a lot of interesting things in the cycling space and whatnot. And I think it's important to lay some groundwork. One of the first things we always ask people may not be completely applicable in this space. So let's start with some ground rules. First off, where did you grow up, and where are you living now? What part of the world do you hail from?
Perfect. Yeah. So I am a Bay Area native. So that means I grew up in California. For people who may confuse the Bay Area with either, I think Florida has a Bay Area, like Tampa Bay Area, I think is what it's called. I'm from the California, the original Bay Area, the only one that matters. And I am from Fairfield, California. There is no reason to know where Fairfield, California is, but if you like Jelly Bellies, we are one of two homes for Jelly Belly Factory. One is, and I think the other one's in Ohio, as a matter of fact.
I was so funny. We were before you hopped on, and before Doug was complaining about his boss, which is right when you hopped on. We were talking about how but like I personally love Jelly Bellies, but like one Jelly Belly is equal to like 30 cheap jelly beans. So like I go for the quantity, like value wise, because they're like designer jelly beans, and they are amazing, and they do amazing things for sport, and they've invested a lot of money in cycling. But
that's true.
It's hard to beat like a pound of jelly beans for like $1.99 from Brock's.
You know what is so funny? I am not a huge jelly bean fan. I only consume Jelly Bellies, I think, and so that's the only thing I know. I didn't know that they were so expensive. But anyways, getting back on track.
There's a jelly bean spectrum of expense, I'm sure, someplace. There's definitely some people who watch the jelly bean market.
Yes, there definitely is. I grew up in Fairfield, California. I currently live in San Jose, which is the South Bay. Fairfield is like this weird area between the North Bay and the East Bay. And I am smack dab in the middle of the South Bay in San Jose, California. And I've just been down here since the pandemic. I moved around. I left California in like my mid early 20s. Kind of bounced around a little bit for about 4 years, came back to the Bay Area. My background, with like what's really shaped me as a person as far as jobs go, is actually luxury retail. So talk about expensive jelly beans. Anything expensive is my forte. And so I was a manager for Nordstrom. I worked for Nordstrom as a salesperson, managed for Nordstrom for a long time as well, and moved over to Louis Vuitton, Ferragamo. I worked at Above Category for those like really, really like deep cycling enthusiasts who know about Above Category. I worked for Above Category as well. And I worked for a PR company in the cycling industry, which is funny because I was not like working in the cycling industry has been like, it's all happened by like chance, if you will. It's all kind of developed into a thing. And yeah, and like you said, I'm a ambassador of multiple brands in the cycling industry or a cycling community. And so yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So I was in doing research for this. I think it's an important point to note, because I think a lot of our guests have this, because I think about my story. Doug, I know your story is very much like this too, is our story of like, the question we always like to start with is how'd you discover bikes were your thing? And for a lot of people, it's that binary experience of when I was a kid, you know, I got on a bike and the world became kind of my oyster, and I never stopped. Whereas I think Doug and I are kind of very similar, is that you get away from it and then you rediscover it, and it's like this blurred line of getting back into it. And I think within kind of your story, you make a point to say that there's this like, there's not a specific chapter that was like, boom, this is where bikes became a part of my life. So rather than like digging around about how you discovered that bikes were your jam, or like what you're saying, like it kind of happened organically, I think from a bike perspective, like let's talk about your earliest memory with bikes. Do you, like, if you think about it, what do you remember as your first experience with bikes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question in the sense of, most of the time I tell the story of like how I got into road biking, or how people know me as a cyclist today. But I grew up, I think as many kids do, grow up riding bikes, but they were actually a pretty big part of my life as, hell, I've been riding a bike since I was 2, like without training wheels.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, me and my dad talk every week, and recently we were talking about the story of how I got a bike for Christmas, right before I turned 2, because my birthday's in September. So I was a little older than 1, got a bike with training wheels, took eventually just one of these training wheels off. They took them off. I was barely 2 years old, and I was just floating all over the street. But anyway, so always like neighborhood kids had bikes. I grew up in like I didn't grow up here, but I spent some time in Sacramento, and every kid in the neighborhood had bikes. So we spent a ton of time on bikes. And when I moved to Fairfield, where that's my true hometown, one of my who ended up being my best friend and is my son's godfather, is he sold me like my first bike that like made an impact on my life, which was this like Haro 2.1 SE, if I'm not mistaken, like the model of the bike. And that got me into BMX like pretty heavy. And as far as dirt jumping, I didn't race too much BMX. I've been to the track, a few times. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time like, doing jumps and stuff like that and like learning how to do tricks. But that period for probably like our maybe group of 7, we were sneaking out of the house on BMX. We were we were doing everything on BMX. So along with like, like the action sport side of it. So by the time I turned 15, it kind of faded out, started skateboarding. And then it comes back to where like, we're talking 12, 13, 14 years later. It comes back as the form it is today. It's like a, somewhat competitive, not so much anymore, cyclist.
I think that story and that narrative is more common than like you see these kids who are raised in juniors programs, right? And they come up and they're just amazing racers. And you're like, oh God, you've been racing bikes since you were 8 because your parents were into bikes, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the anomaly. I think most of us have that same kind of thing. You are given the opportunity because you're around people who are loving it for a multitude of reasons as kids. There's this purity in that space. Do you think when you walk back to that later on, that triggered those memories from that time?
Yeah, I mean, when I first got back on the bike, it reminded me of how much I loved being on the bike. Or like, like the first time I went downhill on a road bike, I was just like, whoa, like everything came back to me. Like super quick story, when I moved to Fairfield and got my bike, my neighbor, who's a family friend, coincidence that we moved around the corner from them, took me up like this, I don't know, it's like a 12% climb. It's very short, but it's like 12%. I'd only ridden my bike in Sacramento, which is very flat. So, it's nothing to compare. So he takes me up this climb, which I ended up having to walk halfway up it.
Yeah, trust me, we did a lot of walking. Like
a couple weeks ago, that's pretty much all we did on all the hills. Yeah,
long gravel ride, lots of walk.
And I remember going down and never realizing that sensation of like how physics works on a bike, because I've been only on flat roads and I'm 11 years old going down 12% and negative 12%. I was just like, whoa, like holy cow, like this is crazy. So I remember all those memories coming back when I finally went on a road bike. And actually one of the first places, because I still lived in the neighborhood that I grew up in, I went up that climb to like kind of relive that whole sensation again, which was pretty cool.
That's cool that imprinted on your noggin, like in that way. It was like, no, yeah. I got to go do that again. Does it still feel the same? Oh yes.
It did. It was crazy. And
when you redid it, did you have to walk it?
That's a good question, because I was not, I mean, I don't consider myself a climber anyways. I don't think so. It's a really steep climb though. I wouldn't put it past me, but I don't think I did.
We'll just go with no. I mean, this is the beauty of being able to like write your own history when you forget stuff. You're like, no, I totally did. Yeah, I pulled a wheelie.
I was in the big ring. Yeah, I was in the big ring in my 11, and I just marched up it.
Just crush it. But that is kind of this, right? There is this time where things start happening and catapulting in that space, and you start to pick up things, just start to kind of happen as you find a new hobby or you find something that you're passionate about, and you start to pick up different pieces, and it does get blurry. It does get blurry for a lot of us. I mean, I think that's a natural kind of progression. Can you walk us a little bit through what that progression was through the lens of history? If we're looking back at it now in a snapshot, like, was it finding it again, racing? What did that look like as an overall progression?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think before I tell you that, I am like a person who really loves bringing people together and just seeing a bunch of people that I care about in like the same space. And so one of my best friends talked me into cycling, like road biking. And I told him I wasn't going to race. That obviously changed very quickly after. I think it was probably like 6-7 months after I was like, okay, next season I'm going to race. And
that happened to me too. It's annoying.
it happens to the best of us. And I started racing. Some of these pieces that we talked about already, that like, ambassadorship and specialized and things like that. I was starting to meet people in those spaces throughout, and racing ultimately didn't pan out for me. I have a background. I played junior college baseball and junior college soccer. So I definitely had my time as an elite athlete. And when I say I didn't want to race, it was because I had already proved myself, and baseball was very important to me, and I closed the door on that at a very healthy point in my life. And so I didn't want to have to redo that whole process over again. Not in the sense of like it was too arduous, but I'm getting into my late 30s, and I was actually just telling this story earlier today. I'm getting into, or not in my late 30s. I'm getting into my 30s. I'm in my late 20s, and I'm like, I'm a dick when I'm competitive. I'm not nice, and I don't mind it. I just, at 28, 29, 30, I don't want to be that guy anymore. Like I don't have a pacifist way of being a competitive athlete. Like I'm just not very nice. And that doesn't mean that I'm not nice off the bike or whatever. It's just when I'm competitive, don't talk to me. If we're racing, I will cuss you out if you do something that I don't approve of. Like I am fiery. And I just didn't see that being like, for what? I know I'm not going to go pro in the sport, in baseball and soccer, that made sense. I was hungry, but in cycling, for what, So I gained a lot of fitness, but I wasn't getting the results. And I kind of started feeling myself slip into that like kind of dark tunnel that a lot of people do when they're chasing a pipe dream, And even though there was no pipe dream to chase for me. And I was just like, you know what? I'm not getting what I want out of the sport anymore, at the competitive side. So I just stepped away. I remember I was like, we're talking about 2017, and I was moving in 2018. I was like, yeah, I'm going to race. And I hadn't been riding my bike too much. I was working at above category. And the season started. I was like, well, I mean, our season starts January 1st. So I was like, I'll wait till February. And February races that came around. I was like, I'll wait till March. And I was like, you know what? Like, obviously I'm not in it. Like my heart's not in it. If I wanted to race, I would have, been ready January 1st. Right. And so I just kind of checked myself and moved on. I was just like, you know what? Like I will enjoy the sport a lot more if I just do it for fun. That's kind of when Photopace comes into play a little more, or like becomes a thing. And I'm shooting, like making photographs while I'm on the bike. That became a lot more fun. And over time, I mean, I tried to do that in the short form, but there's just a lot of details that I think people should know, when we get to this point. And so, yeah, everything else kind of like blurs together and melds together quite quickly after that. But yeah, Photopace is kind of birthed, and then we kind of move from there, and relationships have just grown from there. But I think ultimately it's kind of been in the same place for me, cycling.
And I think I'm already finding some like immediate through lines from the, and you even said it yourself, of I love when the people that I care about are all in one place and they're all together, because talking about it, riding around, riding bikes as a kid with all your friends, and all the people you care about are in one place sharing this thing, and you get to do it again as you rediscover, or really discover, road cycling, and kind of falling down that slippery slope I think all of us fall down, and like really, really quickly escalating, because Doug is the exact same as me. I think it was like I made it 2 years of being like, no, I want this. I've exactly the same way you were, where I had so many things in my life that I had done on 11 and ended up having kind of scars from that, of like, I don't want this thing to be tainted in that way. I want it to remain pure to me, and I want it to remain something that I can continue to care about and can continue to kind of give myself to. But there's a couple things in there that you said that I kind of want to poke around about. Of, you're talking about in terms of, I knew myself enough to know that I was a dick when I was racing. And you're talking about like 25, 26, 27-year-old male, where I think that's something that, and I think the next two questions are going to apply to this, is whether you're 30, 40, 70, 75 plus as a male, when it comes to something competitive. Those are things that like our lizard brains really struggle with, in terms of that level of understanding of ourselves, of like, okay, I know me, I have to pump the brakes. Was that something that you kind of actively and introspectively sought out, or was it something that you had discovered when you, as you said, kind of closed the chapter on baseball, and that was some of the like epilogue of your baseball career?
So it was the latter. I tore my labrum or bicep tendon, and I played for maybe, let's see, that was probably about 17. So I played another 7 years after that. And I remember by the time I was maybe 2021, I was like, yeah, there's just no chance of me doing anything more than I've already done in the sport. But I played junior college, you know, I played at a high level. I played with a lot of guys who signed pro contracts, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, yeah, this is it for me, but I want to keep playing until I can't play anymore. And I remember kind of being terrified at the idea that I wouldn't play baseball anymore. You're talking about somebody who's been playing since he was 5 and hung it up when he was, you know, 22 or 24. You know, that's to this day, I haven't played baseball for 12 years or 13 years, and it still takes up more than half my life. You know, that's mathematically a huge portion of me. Mm-hmm. And when I stepped away from the sport, I was terrified that I would be one of those guys that just like is drinking beer and like coaching, you know, softball, got all fat and, you know, and just
was you still like, got time. You still got time.
Well, trust me, it's in the cards.
Talking about the old days.
Yeah. But you know who I'm talking about, like the guy who just like, it's okay to be around the sport that you love, but you don't do it at a high level anymore. But it's those guys that I was really scared that I was going to turn into, and the fact of like, I didn't want to, like, you know, you can just tell that guy who's like super depressed that he didn't make it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be that guy. So I was shocked that when I stepped away from baseball, and it was like, not an opportunity, but I know, my dad was the president of the league, and he's friends with like any of his peers, like would always not talk about me in like that sense, but like, oh, is Chris going to come? Like, tell Chris come work out with us just to have fun, you know? And I was like, okay. And I worked out with a couple of teams here and there, and I did not miss it. And of course I miss having the fun and the competitiveness of it, but I did not say like, it's not like my girlfriend that I didn't want to break up with was walking past me and I was just like, oh, please take me back. You know, It wasn't that. And I was really scared of that, you know? And so to answer your question about like as far as competitive cycling goes, it was pretty easy because I'd already gone through that process. I was just like, yep, like this is exactly like all the boxes are checked to not be involved in this sport at this capacity. We've done this before. It'll be fine, you know? And so that's kind of how I got to that point. Pretty easy.
I think that's wonderful that you did, because there are 40-year-old masters who still haven't figured that out, right? And they're still going down this rabbit hole in this dark place of trying to chase something that is just never going to happen.
Who are a pipe dream? Who are generally the ones that are yelling at me, at Doug, at the 8-year-old junior in their race.
Yeah, the problem.
NonStop.
Yeah.
Right. It says a lot about where you were, even if that was difficult, but the lesson that you learned from that space and how you're able to apply that, and you know, moving on in your life, it says a lot about how you process that stuff. Because maybe you should go on a speaking tour and tell masters cyclists to chill them.
I don't even know if that's more like, yeah, that's more like, what's the guy's name? Is it Tony Robbins? Like the guru guy? Like,
yeah.
That is like, having that as a superpower of being able to walk away and have a healthy, not necessarily walk away, but like have a healthy relationship with sport where you can be in it but not consumed and obsessed by it, is something that I think a lot of wives would pay a lot of money to send their husbands to go figure out how to do.
Yeah, I wonder what it's like. I think I don't want to like make too many assumptions here, but I wonder if it's like a super American thing too. I don't know any people like from other cultures that care about sports the way we do. And I'm not saying like cycling is a big deal for like, you know, the Belgians and French
for sure.
And stuff. But like, do they have this? It's very relevant that we have a culture where people are chasing athletics as like a pipe dream, like very seriously. And I wonder if my assumption is that a lot of other cultures don't really. It's like, okay, you have fun, you're still doing it. It's a way of life, but you don't have to chase being pro. You don't have to chase being super elite. I don't know.
It's interesting that you bring up Belgium, because the way that I understand that sport there is they treat it the kind of way that we treat, call it NASCAR here in the States, where I have my racer. I'm a member of their fan club. I buy all their gear. I like fly the flag at the races. I go there, I drink beer, and I cheer for my rider. Like that is very much like a spectator sport, whereas like us here, it's part of what makes cycling in America on a bunch of levels, whether it's crits, cyclocross, mountain bike racing, all of those things. Like it's what makes it a lot more vibrant, I think, from a participatory perspective.
Sure.
But at least when it comes to racing.
Yes.
Right?
But I think that there is something to your point around like questioning that American exceptionalism that I think we're all like rattling with right now of like everybody, like we're raised in, at least I was, like we've won all the wars, like undefeated World War champs and like all these things that are like America's awesome and we're, you know, untouchable and Lance Armstrong and win and like like we love building up heroes and like, but it's not that, like a
we're horrible at being humble.
Right. Yes. Yeah. American exceptionalism is not exceptional.
I think that is interesting. Yeah, for sure. Because I think that may be a feature of the way that we're brought up as a culture.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you mentioned, in there, you talked about Photopace, and we've already kind of touched on, you love telling stories and you're already like starting to see your phase out of bike racing and again, we're talking about these like there are no chapters here, there's just blended versions of things overlapping and gradations and all those things. So kind of walk us, was that something that existed before you, or were you part of founding it and then like it's turned into this whole kind of side gig for you? Like walk us through I guess first what Photopace is, and then like how did it come to be and how did you come to be a part of it?
Yeah, so it's another thing that has almost 0 chapters. And so Kyle Thornhill is also from the same area as I am, and he's a phenomenal photographer, a really good cyclist. And Kyle had been in the sport, and I think cycling stayed, like, because he also came from a BMX background, I think cycling and being on a bike stayed in his life a little bit more present throughout his adulthood. And so he was riding around, taking some photos, and I didn't even know he lived near me. One of my friend Marcos, who got me into cycling, was like, "Oh, check him out." And one day we rode by, and we sent messages, "Hey, we should link up." We're talking 2013, 2014, and we did. And this is, I mean, Instagram is still relatively, it's like in its toddler stages, because Instagram came out in 2011. This is 2013, 2014, and so he was just taking these amazing photos with his iPhone. And I was just blown away by this. Photography is a different story, but photography had been in my life as well. And he went from taking his photos with his iPhone to taking full on, like, I'm going to put my DSLR on my back and we're going to go out and like take some photos like while we ride. I'm like, sure. And so the images that he would share with me and that he would share himself and that I would post on Instagram just got a good amount of attention, even though I never had like a bunch of followers. But people were blown away by these things. So it goes from like Kyle taking pictures of me, other people getting interested, more so in Kyle. And so he brings Patrick Lee into the fold, RJ at Cameron, who moved up from LA to finish school, was a big fan of Kyle. So, he's like, "Oh, hey, this guy RJ moved up from LA. He wants to meet up. I'm out of town. Can you meet up with him?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I meet up with them, we ride, we become friends. And ultimately, Kyle is like the hub of like Photopace. He does not like to be considered that, but there's no way Photopace would exist without Kyle, like kind of bringing all these pieces, together.
Yeah, you gotta have somebody who's kind of the locus of everything revolving around, even if they aren't doing all the things.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, it definitely happened organically. Literally, Kyle brought every single person into the fold, and then it just turned into like, we are all here because we love making photographs while we're on the bike. We all ride with our DSLRs. We all are pretty skilled photographers, and we've obviously all grown since like day one. Sure. So that's how it evolved. And, here we are in 2021. So it's a collective, it's a photo collective. We take on gigs here and there, individually and as a collective. And we just try to, tell great stories and make creative images that, because we don't focus on like the high elite athlete, even though some of them are our friends, we get to tell stories of cycling that are very relatable. Like when Kyle was taking photos of me on the bike, initially I was a Cat 5. I mean, at first I was barely racing. I was probably training for the upcoming season. I was a Cat 5. I didn't have any cycling etiquette. I didn't have any of that. I just liked wearing like cool kits and going relatively cool places, And so, it just kind of evolved from that. And we built a community around like the more ordinary cyclists. And I think that's what resonates with people, is that we're not taking pictures of people ripping around corners, even though sometimes we do. But it's more like that coffee shop and all the other things that come with cycling.
Because those are the things that are more relatable from a touch point perspective. Everybody's got to stop at the Quickie Mart to refill their water. Like it's got to happen. And so those moments, and I think photography that captures those moments can be a lot more relatable and poignant for people, because those are experiences they have. Was this something that you all said, hey, everybody, we're going to take these sort of photos? Or did it just kind of organically get to that space?
I think because, am I the only person who's ever raced a bike? I mean, I'm sure somebody else has, but I think no one else even looked at cycling like that from a competitive level. So it was like, no one was ever really in the community that I was, as far as like, we're only going to take these types of pictures, because the only types of photos they were taking were the only ones that they could take, right? They couldn't take they weren't going to bike races to make photographs. They were just like, hey, we're going on a casual ride today, 60 miles, 70 miles, and we're going to photograph at the gas station. We're going to photograph like at the water break. We're going to and so it worked out that way, versus if you get a bunch of like Cat 1s together and say like, hey, we need to make some photographs, it's probably going to feel a lot different,
Yeah, one of those is a lot more accessible than the other.
Right.
For sure. Well, I like that has developed, and you guys are doing like work as a collective, and everybody kind of publishes everything on Photopace in certain specs. Has this led to like professional gigs for people in the collective to do professional photo work? And are you doing some of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's completely supported me through the pandemic. Everybody, that was the purpose of Photopace, was exactly that. We had our little DM chat, as one does, so it's all 8 of us. And I remember, I don't know who brought it up, but it was kind of like we had this DM chat for probably a year. And then it was kind of like, why don't we make an Instagram? Like, we just put all our photos, because a lot of other photographers do this. Is like, if you go out together, you'll make a Google Drive and then, say like, hey, dump all your photos in here and let's like share them. So it turned into like, we were sharing photos like via link in DM. It's like, why don't we just publish these like via Instagram, the platform we're already on, you know?
Yeah.
And so it worked out that way. And I don't remember at this point, it had to be though. And I don't want to say this was my idea, but I think I was just adding on to. I'm like, hey, at this point we were getting like bicycling saying like, hey, can you go out and shoot a cover for us? Or Physique saying like, hey, we've got this new shoe. Do you mind making some photographs of it? And it would always be like that. Kyle, you're the photographer. We're going to find a model for you. And then a separate like channel, it would be like, hey, Christopher, we found this really cool photographer. He's in your area. His name is Kyle. It's like, with him. Like,
no, I got you. I know. Yeah, we're good.
And so that was the point of like just making it very overt. Like, hey, we're all together. If you need us to do a project for you, we will.
Yeah.
And so that's how the Instagram came up.
So, I think this is the point where a lot of folks that fancy themselves Instagram influencers or talented with photography, or the DSLR carrier folks that do this as, I'm passionate about this. I like telling stories. I like everything that Christopher's saying right now. At what point there's got to be a point where an email or a direct message or something from an editor or a copywriter or something like that shows up in one of your inboxes. Like, when you get that, did you guys try and dig around about like how did you discover us? Because you named a couple pretty decent sized rags that are looking for you guys to make things for them. Like that stuff doesn't generally happen out of the blue without somebody digging around and finding, trying to go find those diamonds in the rough, as it were.
You know, getting back to above category, one of the owners would always say when we get an email to say, ask, how did you find us? And I was horrible at it. That's probably why I got fired. That's probably one of the reasons. and I am really bad at that still. So how did these people find us? Close to zero clue. Some of them, I mean, a lot of them will say like, hey, we've been following you on Instagram or whatever, you know, but like how do these like larger, you know, publications or companies find us? I mean, I think ultimately it probably comes down to Instagram algorithm. Like I said, I think 3 out of 4 probably disclose we've been following you on Instagram for a long time, but for that one that just kind of comes out of the blue, I have no clue.
Well, but I think that in and of itself speaks to the idea of, okay, why are we putting these on Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever file sharing system?
Right.
Like, why don't we publish these out to the world? Because it's just like being, you could be the best painter in the world or the best graphic designer, but if nobody's seeing your work, no one can appreciate your talent. So like the fact that you guys are putting this stuff out into the public sphere for not only judgment, good or bad, but for other people to see and other people to get inspired by, I think it has some merit in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just hope that, you know, it just continues. I do like a lot of the social, I do pretty much 100% of the social media for Photopace. And it's really just, we just hope to like tell a different story and make sure that people stay inspired, because the other thing is just making sure that we don't get too monotonous, and we've kind of slowed down because of that, because I don't want to pigeonhole the entire brand into we only do this type of photography.
Mm-hmm.
Like we are at this point, I mean, there's 8 of us and we are all, in my opinion, tremendously talented. And so I want somebody from like a running company to, you know, DM Photopace and say like, hey, I know you guys usually shoot cycling, but like I love what I see from Kyle, or I love what I see from all you guys, and I would love for you guys to be a part of this project. So I try to make sure that our feed is diverse in like what we can shoot, or at least do it through our story too. Yeah.
You said something about storytelling and that you want to tell a story. Is this love of telling a story, was this developed through photography, or is this just a piece of Christopher that has always been there, this desire to tell a rich story that is multi-dimensional?
Yeah, I think storytelling is just something that I yearn to do. I constantly, if you text me, I'll probably at some point text you back with like this like emoji, like with characters, like, and like, you know, like a script, you know, I do that quite often. I'm pretty sure it gets on a lot of my friends' nerves because they end up being like super long. But I'm always just wanting to tell a story. When I say I wrote in middle school, it was like my own thing. It's not like I was a good writer or anything like that, but I would always write stories through middle school. I actually got suspended for one because it was super vulgar.
Happens the best.
You know, boys in the late 90s. I mean, like, what do you expect? So, and then, you know, I've played with like some creative writing and stuff. So I do love just telling a story of sorts. And so I think that's just something I'm very passionate about. I find it interesting. I think when it comes to photography, if your photo doesn't tell a story, it's kind of like, why? I think storytelling within photography, I'm working on a series like of just people that I meet and making a photograph of them, and people that I already know too. But, you know, if you just see just the photo, it's like, oh, well, the photo might not be that great, or just it by itself, it might not mean much. But if you know something about the photo, like I just put my grandmother on my story today, and she's 92 and she's one of 19, and you know, and stuff like that like starts to mean something. And so making sure that we're making photographs that mean something is like very important.
So you mentioned earlier that you've spent a lot of time in luxury sales, and you kind of fancy yourself, I'm gathering you fancy yourself a salesman, but also a marketer as well. Do you think those are a byproduct of being a storyteller and just figuring out ways to express yourself, or are they more supporting all of the other things that you're doing? Like, are they being caused by this natural creative outlet, or are you doing them begrudgingly to help support the creative outlet?
No, I mean, that's a really great question. You guys should take over my show. We got to hang out because I don't ask questions out of this good. Like, you guys are asking great
Hey,
questions.
we warned you that this is just a conversation, and wherever it's going to go, it's going to go.
How this feels. I mean, every question should be followed with, well, how did that make you feel?
Yeah.
Right. No,
Terry Gross, right?
But you know, it's not begrudgingly. I don't. It does happen naturally. I do want the better for Photopace, so I don't consider myself. I don't think that what I'm doing is not marketing Photopace, but I rarely do things just solely for the purpose of marketing Photopace, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I don't want to be the guy with the brown suit and the tie, you know.
Right. And you kind of said that by you're restricting some of the content because you don't want it to be formulaic and things like that. And I get that,
Right.
but there's a point where, like, marketing is not a bad word. Like, marketing's not a four-letter word. Like, and that's not how I was approaching it at all. But I just see a lot of the things that you get into and looking through all of your feeds and things like that. Like, I think it's an innate quality in you to one, to want to tell a story, but also to promote or
to know how
share.
to use that story to move
to like
the ball forward.
guide it and kind of put feathers on the arrow, as it were, so you can like guide whatever thing is, so people can understand that it's not just a photo of, you know, of my grandma. It's this and it's this and it's this. Like, it's adding more color to all of those things.
Yeah, and that's fair. And in terms of Photopace, I just want to see everybody win. You know, that these are my friends that we're talking about, and we are very much real friends. We get in arguments. It has nothing to do with Photopace. We get in arguments. You know, somebody gets on somebody's nerves, whatever. But at the end of the day, Photopace or not, if I'm friends with you, I want to see you win. And so when I do work that involves you or one of my friends, I want to see you win from that, you know, regardless of what that is, you know. So yeah, I do try to put some wings on things when you see me, you know, do some stuff in social media.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way for us to use social media, right? There is, if it comes from a disingenuous place, it's garbage. If it comes from a place that means something to you and you care about it, then it can have actual impact, and it can actually move the narrative forward, and it can open people's eyes and allow them to see other things. And that's kind of where I want to pivot a little bit, because I think, you know,
this is a hard pivot.
Yeah, it's a real hard. We're gonna just like grab the e-brake and jack this sucker to the right.
I'm driving a CRX right now.
Right.
We're driving a CRX in a parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. It's time to do donuts in reverse. But I think this is how I first, you first came into my like purview. I don't tend to follow photography, and I follow a lot of cycling stuff, but I probably had seen some things show up in my algorithm. But I believe you had commented on something someone had said, and I was like, who is this person? Oh my God, they're an amazing photographer. They have all these projects going on. I started following you and seeing what you were up to. And I think one of the things that you have become engaged in through your storytelling is helping people bridge to a place they can't maybe understand or access, by being very honest about where you're at, what's going on in the world, and especially over this pandemic, about the challenges that we all face, and the challenges that specifically people of color and people who are outside the specific white, basically John and I, as we appear, right outside that box. And I think that's really been important, an important work that you've been doing. And, this isn't just the pat on the back, but I think this is also we're seeing the need for these stories to be told authentically. And I think that's where I first intersected with seeing some of your work. How have you viewed your work in that space, from a personal perspective? Because that's got to be a tough place to balance, understanding that there are things you want to talk about, and that you want to bring light to, but also, you're still trying to create art in another way. How has that confluence really happened for you?
And just to be clear, are you talking about like my photography in concert with my messaging, or
Yeah,
just my
I think so. I think so, because I think there is a confluence in some aspects, and I think that's important. The messaging is important for sure, but there is kind of a bleed over, and I think that's how some people are capable of approaching the things that you say, because they trust in your photography, and I think that's a window into this space.
Yeah, and so it's funny that you say that, and I would assume that other people, if you're saying that, other people feel the same way, and I have never tried to marry the two together. I think I am not a person who's been like sliding into Monday like caption, like that's
right. No, for sure, for sure.
And it bothers me, that idea that something can happen, in the world, and that I can open my Instagram feed and see sliding into Monday like whatever, and it would be this image that, is just very forced. And I think this isn't the first time that this image that I'm going to reference is not the first time that I talked about this, but I remember I was really upset. I think this was a month before. This must have happened right after Ahmaud Arbery, but George Floyd wouldn't happen for like another 4 or 5 weeks or something like that. And or keep in mind, Ahmaud Arbery died like 2 months before we saw the video. So when we saw by the time we saw the Ahmaud Arbery video, and then
we were well past that point. Yes,
right. I just remember hearing like this people of color thing, and this people of color, and I've never referred to. I try not to refer to people of color as that. I just say Latino, Black, White, Asian, whatever. I try to be very specific. And when I posted this photo, it was just a photo that RJ took of me. I'm just kind of like standing there. Obviously, I'm a Black person, and I wrote this long message, and it got this very strong response, very positively received. And that was definitely a moment where I try not. I think people can kind of tell a little bit from the conversations that we've been having. I'm not a super serious person. It doesn't mean that I'm over here bullshitting around all the time. But no. I try to balance how I want to feel like at all times with how I'm currently feeling. And so I'm, sitting on my bike and I'm talking about, the fact that I don't like the term people of color. I don't think it's a slur. I don't think it's like the wrong choice of words. It's just something I just don't agree with most of the time. And like I said, it was well received. And I was like, you know what, from here on out, if I have something to say, I just want to make sure that people are getting the message, and I think there is some level of consciousness of like what photo I'm going to use for that, whether it be my photo or a photo of me. But I've never really tried to make it too on the nose with I'm Black, so I'm gonna use my Black skin to put on it's never really been that,
Sure.
But I just want to make sure the message is across.
Sure. And I kind of get, Doug, what you're saying in terms of there's no one is an island, in the sense that because somebody sees you if somebody sees you for whatever, like skin tone, hair color, like whatever somebody tries to like define you as, that is no different than what you write on Instagram, what your photo is. But I think, Doug, where you were going is, if you build a cache of this person is really, really talented at photography, regardless of what those comments are or what the paragraph underneath those photos is, it gives folks a window that when you actually do want to access that as a platform, you have people that are already in there and invested in you as Christopher the artist. But now you're giving them, Christopher, this is who I am in a more holistic view. So
that's
I get why you reacted that way, because it was worded a little bit short and blunt. But I also understand where my friend is coming from, in the sense that like you've built an audience of folks that may or may not fit on whatever spectrum your brain functions on and where you kind of see the world. But because you have that platform, whether it be on Instagram, the podcast, like we run into it too here, it's like when you build a platform, suddenly you have a thing to stand on and people are listening to you because you've built the thing. Like it's endemic to what that is. So, I understand why you react that way, but I think it's more of, was there a conscious choice? I think based on what you said, was there a conscious choice at some point, whether it was Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, just anytime Q2 of 2020, where you said, no, I am making an active choice to speak my truth, regardless of what the imagery is. Like, was that an active choice, or was it more of an arc of put a little bit of something out there, see the response, put a little bit, like, because this is something it's a difficult topic for a lot of people to broach, mostly people that look like Doug and I, that it's almost like you have to dip the toe in the water and then see if it's okay, and then you go a little bit further out, and then you go a little bit further out. So like was like you finding kind of your voice as, hell, I would almost say an advocate at this point, something that was active or more of a passive decision?
I've always been this way, just in general. The photo that I'm referencing and the post that I'm referencing was definitely a moment where things, like the consistency, the cadence increased a lot. I don't know why this is sticking out to me, but I remember when the Spurs, we're talking Facebook days, but when the Spurs hired their first like women's coaches, like the first woman coach in the NBA, I remember making a post about that too. And there's definitely things between those two that we're talking about 7 years apart that I would always speak out about. But if you were to see me in person, I was always as passionate. And I think that moment that I've already referenced definitely kind of clicked. It definitely feels that way, you know, where I was just like, I'm just going to keep talking as much as I can. But I do try to still marry the two a little bit.
Okay, so to that point of continuing to talk, last summer in Bicycling, you wrote an article, if you want to know what it's like to be black for a day, be a cyclist.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. How did that come to be, and what was your feeling of composing that during
all of the crap?
Just everything that we all remember from last year, whether you're like, we had riots here in Cincinnati, so it is a location that feels close to us, and whoever you're at, wherever you're at, if you didn't have this, you still remember the visuals from last summer.
For sure. Is that the title? Is that the title of the article?
Is it? Hold on. Yeah, hold on. Let me see. Hold on. If you want to know what it's like to be black for a day, be a cyclist.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they used that. It's so funny.
And then the subtitle is, it's a joke, but I keep telling it because it's true.
Well, okay. So I was just like, man, I was like, because that was what I was going to explain, is that that's always been a joke. I remember I'd probably been riding a bike about a year, maybe not. And getting buzzed by a car was like, that was just the thing. That's what made me, the inception of that joke is, we're talking 2013, me riding around the corner from my house and getting buzzed by cars. And I was just like, man, this really sucks. Like, not the sport, but I'm just like, this is terrifying, but I was just like, there's literally nothing I can do about it. And and I don't think that the driver, some drivers go around you and give you a little bit more space, but most drivers don't care if they scared you or not. They're going about their business, and I'm thinking about that while riding a bike. And I was like, yeah, no matter who you are, being a cyclist is similar to being black, not in the full experience.
Right. Yes.
But if you want to, but everybody can relate to that. Like, somebody go by you and you're like, hey, MF, whatever. And they're just like, see you later. Or the guy who will like, drop the gear on his truck and just smoke you out, that's like, I feel like that's like full on assault. Like, I honestly feel like
that's what we have here. We have the coal rolling. Yeah.
Yeah. And so things like that, things like that. I'm just like, yeah, I mean, these are real instances that every cyclist, every road cyclist can relate to, that can give you a tiny slice of what it's like when you're trying to get a job, when somebody calls the police on you and you were not doing anything, you were doing wheelies on your bike. You know, when, you know, any regular life situation that puts Black people in harm's way is very similar to getting buzzed by a car. So that's kind of what that article, that's like the idea of that article. I know I talk about it in there. So yeah, that's where that's the place that article is coming from, and the title.
Hey, did like you reach out to Bicycling? Did they reach out to you? Did you know somebody in the joint? They're like, hey, Christopher, we know you keep telling me this joke, and I know you think it's a joke, but this will actually make a good article.
We will print it.
Yeah. And you like make it a punchline? Do you want to stand up over here at Bicycling headquarters? Like, what's up?
You know, so a couple of years prior to last year, Leah Flickinger, who was an editor, she left, she came back. She had reached out to me to do a different article, and I don't remember if it was necessarily race-based. No, and it wasn't. It was kind of like just giving, you know, like, tell me what you like about cycling. They wanted a different they wanted different wording, they wanted different storytelling around that. And so I don't know if it was Leah, but that Leah was my door into bicycling. So I've done, I think, 3 or 4. I'm working on one that I will be finishing after we get off this podcast. So I've done 3 or 4 or 4 or 5. And so Bicycling and I, we've already made the relationship. We've already worked together. Like I said, we shot a cover for them. I've read an article for them, you know, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So they already knew who I was. So I think, you know, I didn't know Bill Stricklen at the time. He may have been following me already, but I know Bill, by the time George Floyd, you know, all that happened, he was trying to make sure that bicycling was on the right side of history and on the right side of sending the message to the cycling community. So they reached out, and then that's how that happened.
I think that's really, really good, because that progress and that change, like bicycling is not the bicycling I read when I was in high school in the early 90s. It's a very different publication.
That's a good thing. That's
It's
a real good thing.
It's very
bicycling
good.
Bicycling is not the same bicycling from 2019.
That's correct. That's correct. And you know what? And that's really, really good with, you know, our good friend Tara being hired there. Like, that's awesome. This is the sort of thing we need to see. But while that is changing, right? While that piece of it is changing, and that is good, right? And you have that going on, nothing else has actually changed, especially in cycling. Like, nothing's changed. Like, there's still garbage fucking everywhere, and companies and organizations not listening to people who are saying, this is how this affects us, this is how we feel.
No, they're gonna have a summit.
Yeah.
And they hired an agency.
Right.
It's fine. Everything's solved.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
good.
Sure.
Done.
And that's been a problem. And yesterday, as the crow flies, even though we are time traveling right now for all the pebbles, a really pretty major article, you know, an opinion article came out in Bicycling, and it's fantastic. It's by Khalil Saucier. I'm going to assume that Khalil has a French pronounced last name, just because I don't know, but I think Saucier sounds nice.
You pronounced it well, so if it's not the way you say it, you said it well.
Fantastic. Sorry, Khalil. But it's called Cycling and the Power of White Privilege. And there's a quote from here that I think struck John and I a lot. And I know that you posted about this on your Instagram and wanted to talk about this tonight. And I think it's important that we talk about this, because white people need to get their shit together and figure this out, especially within cycling. And the quote is this: it says, anti-racist efforts within cycling must move beyond the euphemisms of inclusion, diversity, sensitivity, and allyship, and begin to seriously consider the dimensions of power at play. What's your take on Khalil's words and where we're at right now within this industry that you work in, and work with companies and companies that we respect and have worked with as well, you know, and had on this show? Where are you at with this in this space?
I really just think that a lot of the attitude around, I think in cycling is unique. It's unique that it's it's an American enough sport and industry that you'd think would have enough references outside of the sport and outside of the industry to understand how important these topics are. But also, that's what makes it dumbfounding that when we talk about inclusivity and diversity and all these things, it's like they just can't figure out the Rubik's Cube. And it's not a Rubik's Cube, for all intents and purposes, it's not a Rubik's Cube. It's simply, don't be racist, don't try to make things all white, don't try to make things super elitist. We can get into price point, but that's a different topic. But like, make the sport accessible. But accessibility doesn't have to do with just like the barrier to entry as far as financials go. Like, stop showing just white people if just white people don't ride bikes. You know what I mean? And also, don't turn trans folks into or gay folks or black folks, don't turn them into this like caricature or this token of going in the right direction, right? I don't, as a black person, I don't hold like my Asian friend as like hey, I got one Asian friend, or my Indian friend is like, hey, I know an Indian guy too, but cycling somehow does that with all of these I don't want to call them genres, but all these different people, all these different, cultures and things like that. They try to hold these cultures as like, hey, like now we're doing this too. And it's empty. It's very hollow way of doing things. It shouldn't be like it's just not the way the world is. It's just not the way the United States is,
Yeah. It feels a lot like a paint by number almost in the sense of like,
yes.
there's a whole sea of little blobs on a piece of paper, and it's like, well, we got that one, and now we got to go fill this one in, and we got to go fill this one in, and we got to go fill this one in. And it's not that. It's like my mom and I were talking about this last week, and she's like, I don't understand why people can't just be good to everybody. Like, it's that simple. Like, it's legitimately that simple. But the interesting piece that I pulled out of this article outside of that comment was, I had to read it a couple times because the first time that I read it, I felt as though it was like, because there's points in it, and there's some points that you made about it too that are like, oh, like, no, I'm good. Like, I voted for this guy in the last election.
Right,
like,
yeah.
I'm good, right?
Resolved.
Like, I'm like good. And my wife and I were talking about this last night about like some of the most dangerous people are the ones that voted to oust the outgoing president, because they do think that like, it's all done, work's done, we're good, like, check the box, like I did my part as a white person. But the article goes in to say that like, the idea that this is an individualistic problem is dangerous. Yes, there is there are individual situations that like, almost like a Cesar Millan perspective, like the pack has to take care of those individual situations, but the pack is also not maintaining the pack, as it were, in the sense of like, it's not just Chloe, it's not just Quinn, it's all
it's the fact that Chloe and Quinn are allowed to exist within this space and do those things and get away with it.
Right. And within that sit people like Doug and I that are a part of this world along with you, and that makes all of us culpable for it. And the first time that I read it, I was like, man, I feel attacked by this. And I was like, and I know that's not the intent of it, but from that perspective, that's what makes this thing so good, is that it brings up all of those pieces, that it's not just a check the box and move on to the next one, or like fill in the paint by number and move on to the next one, because it is like breaking down an entire system and like unwiring how we all have kind of come to understand this industry within kind of our whole like nationscape.
Yeah. So for the people listening and you guys too, if someone were to say like, right now, close your eyes, tell me what a racist looks like. If you don't picture, somebody being lynched right now, or white guy lynching a black guy, white guy lynching a black guy or hanging by a tree, you probably didn't grow up in the United States. Unfortunately, that is racism. That is a very small slice of it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen anymore, because it definitely still does. But we have done, I'm not even going to include myself in this. The United States has done a very good job at showing creating who the villain is, even though that's not the only villain. So when you have somebody like a Donald Trump, and I said this in my story, and I've said this, I've had arguments with people who I realize just won't get it. When Donald Trump was president, I barely complained about him. He was probably one of the more entertaining people that I've ever witnessed be on TV, and he definitely pissed me off on a daily basis.
Yeah.
However, being Black and being the grandson of somebody who grew up in Monroe, Louisiana in the late 20s and early 30s, and being another grandson of a woman who lived within a mile from where Dr. Martin Luther King got shot and marched with him the 2 days before he got killed, Donald Trump has never been this idea or this person that I needed to worry about in the sense of like, that's the bad guy. And so when Khalil's talking about individualistic, ideas and individualism when it comes to racism, your Chloes and your Quins, sure, they're problems that they barely register on me. Like that. If you get rid of Trump, well, he's gone, right? So if you get rid of Trump, you get rid of Chloe, you get rid of Quinn. You're telling me the problem solved?
No.
Are you telling me that, like, anybody listening, are you telling me the problem solved? Trump's been gone for 4 months. We have a lot of problems still.
Yeah, people are going to fill that vacuum of the personhood that is the problem.
And to think that you can attribute something so systemic on one person and make them the poster boy of things like that, it infuriates me. Like when like I said, the last 4 years when people are like, see, Donald Trump, racist this, racist that. I'm like, look, I've never seen a Black person hanging from a tree, but that happened when my grandparents were alive, and Donald Trump didn't make that worse. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that I'm not even trying to be an apologist. I'm just saying, don't give me that, because I've already been told these stories. You're learning these stories in your 20s and your 30s.
Yeah.
That's lazy. You went to school. If you're talking to me, you are out of school for the most part. I rarely talk to high school students. So you are an adult. And if you're going to tell me that you waited a majority of your life to find out about racism, you are lazy. You are absolutely lazy. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
No, you shouldn't be.
So
No.
when we have these conversations, when Khalil writes these articles and things like that, it pisses me off again. It re-inspires me to write and all that stuff. But these are the messages that people need to hear. Just because you voted for Kamala and all this symbolism, look, I had a conversation with somebody about, and we don't have to. I mean, we can get into politics, but we don't have to. But I remember having this conversation about voting for Kamala and Joe, and which I did. But I told them, I was like, you as a white person don't understand what Black people are talking about when it comes to giving them the vote. You're voting for Kamala maybe because she'll be the first woman vice president. Maybe you like her policy, maybe you like Joe, but you aren't even aware of the concerns of why the Black community or other minority communities are hesitant to vote for this guy. And they're super valid, because you're over here voting because woohoo, and we're over here like, I don't know, Kamala's put a lot of Black people in jail. And it's the same thing with the vaccine, right? Like, it's the same idea. It's like Black people look at the vaccine. It's not saying that they don't get it, but it's just like, we've had a history of like the Tuskegee experiment and all that stuff. Like, we have our reservations. And if the white community is not aware of these reservations in the Black community and the Latino community and the Asian community, if white people aren't aware of the concerns of the community, you will never help us push the ball forward, move the chains, because you're always going to be doing something for your own agenda that has nothing to do with helping us out.
As I said repeatedly in my office before the election, look, the last thing I want to do is vote for an old white guy and a cop, but I'm going to do it, right? Like, right. I'm not jazzed about it, because I understand, but I'll do it. But that being said, to me, at least the way I see this is a listening problem. This is a listening problem and an acknowledgement problem, because what it forces people to do, and it forces them to undergo self-examination about past behavior and current behavior. And no one in this world is blameless for things they've done in the past, right? We have all probably made decisions or treated people in some fashion in a way that we are not proud of. But when you're forced to deal with that and actually have to sit with the reality of that examination, I think people just want to be like, no, I'm good. I'm going to turn off. I'm just going to close my eyes and turn this off. I don't want to listen because I don't want to have to hear that about myself. Do you find that to be the crux here, is that it's not listening?
Yes, yes. I think listening is part of the problem. I think the self-reflection part is maybe greater. I think if you got over the hurdle of like the self-reflection and self-reflection defined by like look at yourself, look at your family, look at your dynamic, look at your community. Like when I say your community, I guess like your circle of friends and your network. Sure. And if people did that more, we could change a lot. I equate where we're at as a country to like imagine if you grew up, your dad's your hero, my dad's my hero. You grew up and you find out all these horrible things about him, like maybe like right before he passes away, right? And you're trying to deal with like this idea that you've held, that you thought to be true for so long, only to find out that your judgment and your idea of this figure would be completely different had you had this information, years ago. And that's where the country is at. We've been told that, Columbus discovered, America and all this stuff. We've been told lies about Thanksgiving. We've been told lies about like hell. Who even on the opposite side, we've been told lies about who Martin Luther King is and who Malcolm X is, and sure. Like how they contributed to the movement. And I think we are literally just now. I think the most amount of truth has been spoken within the last year that people are really having a hard time digesting and absorbing the information that they just got. To a point, I don't necessarily hold a whole, because you got to look at this. We can't attribute that to one person. You got to look at it as like, how does a society kind of change their perspective, and deal with like that level of trauma? We've been lied to for a long time. Since the inception of this country, we've been lied to. The reason we're on here, the way we look at sports, the way we look at the family dynamic, anything, all of that literally would be a completely different story had we not lied about the inception of this country. Like, think about like what it means to go to like a college football game. For those of you guys in the Midwest, so I know college football is relatively
there's
big.
Plenty of it. Yeah.
Think about what like that tradition means in the Midwest, but how racist college football is. Like, what would it be if we addressed that? What would that gathering feel like, right? And it's the same thing with like Thanksgiving. Like, what does that gathering feel like for people? I mean, I've known the story of Thanksgiving for not long enough, but now that I know the story of Thanksgiving, it's kind of like it feels different. Like, I still want to see my family, sure, but it feels different, and that's everything we're looking at.
Right. You'd be happy to get together with them for any reason. It's coffee cup day. It's coffee cup day, and we're all here to take coffee out of our coffee cups.
And so we're really addressing that now. And I think white people have the biggest issue with that because they're the ones that like consuming the lie and telling the lie, and so I think that's a huge challenge. And I honestly, I don't have an answer other than that, but listening is part of that, but self-reflection is another part of that.
And I think that there's, and I think that there's a third part, and you mentioned it, and it's something that comes with just the raw education of understanding, and it's something that we talk about a lot on our show, is like, it's the reason that we have a single person come on each week to tell their story, because it's about understanding that each person has a dynamic history and a very unique path that's led them to where they are now. And all of our paths started long before we ever took our first step. So sure. Understanding a lot more of that background, I think, gives a lot more credence to things like, watching 13 on Netflix, the documentary about that, and watching a lot of the documentaries that came out last year around like the idea of super predator and the war on drugs and all of these things that were okay, we did the civil rights movement, but we're going to do these really subversive things instead that are passing legislation to still like do this and to hold all of this stuff down. And I think that's where like I look at all of these things and I watch like my parents grapple with it, and and I watch, you know, older generations that have just swallowed and like kind of sat and absorbed the world as it was, because they were baby boomer generation and they had it, they like easy breezy, like World War II was over and it was like the like most profitable generation, and they never had to do any of that introspection, they never had to do any of that learning. But now
because the system worked for them.
Right, because
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
built, it was built specifically for them to be successful. But the thing that they're doing now is they're needing to do the introspection. They're needing to go back and analyze their own personal history as well as the country's history, and they're needing to do it on a pretty rapid pace. And it's like, I think about it as though like they're all going to the Thanksgiving dinner and they're all trying to eat the entire plate of food at like all at once, and it can't, like it just can't go down all at the same time. And that's where watching it from where I am while I'm, you know, going through my own process is like, man, what's the Maalox or what's like the Pepto-Bismol to help all of this stuff go down? Because we're asking folks, rightfully so, to undo 200 plus years of damage, even further than that. But like once we got here, to just like move on. And it's like, it's unrealistic and it's kind of dangerous, but it's where we need to get.
Well, Latoya Green, somebody who I had on my show, I highly suggest that people listen to Latoya. She always talks about, when it comes to white people, she always says you need to give up something. You know, you need to give up something, and it's like, and she's talking in now terms, but equate it to the fact, like let's say for the last 10 years, every month you've been getting $100 like just deposited into your bank account. You know what I mean? We'll call it $1,000, something that we can really like sink our teeth in.
Yeah,
and you're just like, man,
it's a bike.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, like, man, I don't know where this $1,000 is coming from, but like, I'm not gonna say anything. You know, who's gonna say that? And then let's say today, like, let's say, you know, you got a couple of, you know, let's say you got $50,000 now, and it's like you find out that you got to give that back because you never checked where that $1,000 was coming from every month, and somebody said like, yo, we made a mistake or whatever, you got to give that money back. I'll tell you right now, I'm still gonna try to buy a car. You know, and that's the thing. It's like it's going to be really hard to turn that back over, right? You've been benefiting from something for so long,
Yeah,
and it's gone unchecked for so long, and now it's time to turn it over. Like, yes, you morally and ethically, you should give up something. I am not saying this as a sympathizer, but I understand the human condition of what makes it so hard to do that. You know, and that's the part that white folks need to understand is like, sure, I understand that it's a challenge to break some bad habits, to look at things differently, but you have to do it. If you don't, we'll be here forever. This isn't I don't look at things this way. You know, I didn't grow up to even be able to understand how you look at things. You know, I have to like, that's like a script that I have to write for myself to understand how white people look at America. I cannot look at it the same way you do, you know? And so that's where we've got to get. That's what we've got to do. You know, those are the important things that need to happen. So yes, listening. We just keep going back to reiterate. Yes, listening, but it's yourself. You got to look at yourself. You got to look at your community. You got to look at your circle. Talk to your family. So many people have been like, you know, with the election and everything, is like, oh, like you're right. I talked to my dad. He's a Trump supporter. I think we're going to talk less, or it's just like we just don't see eye to eye. Da 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 da. And I'm like, I mean, now is always a great place to start, but you should have done that a long time ago. You shouldn't be like, it has to happen. It has to continue to happen.
And you shouldn't talk less. You actually should probably talk more.
Yeah.
Like the opposite is true in that situation.
True.
Right. You know, like you need to engage harder once you are starting to grapple with these things yourself, and you need to engage harder and try to get them across that line. And maybe
100%.
Maybe it's just those little spoons, right? Maybe it's just little spoon feeding of like, okay, so you understand, like, it's hilarious. My fiance and I, like, all the time we'll be at over at dinner and we'll be like, yeah, whatever, ACAB. And her mom's like, why do we always get into this? And I'm just like, because cops are bastards. This is the whole thing. Like, can I let you know what's up? And so it's just constant, right? And it's funny. And like, then she's always like, the other day, she's like, you know, it seems like Doug just talks about being queer a lot. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm trying to normalize it for like, and it's funny because the like, there's those sort of things are things we have to do. And it's hard but it is kind of incumbent on us. So I want to bring this back to cycling so we can kind of put a little bit more of a wrap on this, because these things, cycling is a microcosm of the world, but it is, as you said before, a uniquely, weirdly positioned to have fuck all for diversity compared to even other major American sports, just from a participatory space. And that's not even saying, like, we know that if we look at, football, the people who run football are white, and the people who play football are, if like we want to be just real clear about it, right? There is a challenge in that space, but even on a participatory level, cycling can't even get to that space in the volume that other sports are. And obviously we have a bigger management problem. I think people are figuring out on a grassroots level how to engage and find more people who are different, and bring them into the sport. I think some really good grassroots movements are happening, but the challenge seems to be how we take the people who've been endemic to this sport and explain to them why this representation is more important and why they have to do this work to do this, and ultimately to the leadership. So what do you have to say to that space? I know that you work with some awesome companies that listen, but what do you have to say to that space, as someone who's creating in this space and working with these brands? What's your message into that area?
And I think the ellipses onto that I want to add is that the majority of those brands have been acutely silent for 12 months now.
Yeah. They posted some black squares and not done crap.
Stop worrying about your bottom line. It's not, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I don't know if how well Bicycling Magazine is doing. They're just a good example. They
fully.
Yeah, and hey, maybe they lost a ton of subscribers? I don't know. But don't worry about your bottom line. This is it's funny to think about the fact that this whole conversation has nothing to do with industry. Very little to do with industry, but it very much does. So it's like, if you just decided to position your company on the right side of the argument and to discuss these things or provide opportunities in these spaces, you would be doing better. The idea that people are like, well, we don't want to get political because, and they never say because, they just say it's kind of hard stop there. We don't want to get political. We don't want to get involved. And the reason why is because you don't want your bottom line to drop. You're scared that Joe Schmo is going to stop buying bikes. Well, if Joe Schmo wants to stop buying bikes, you got to be okay with him not buying bikes, because at the end of the day, I currently don't know how to feel about Trek. Not necessarily going to say anything super positive about them, but that's a brand who was called out tremendously last year, and it's just like, look, like I think if you guys were to like make a hard line, I don't think you're gonna sell less bikes. I think you probably sell more, right?
You're still Trek.
You're still Trek, and so I think the idea is this fear of we're gonna lose some dollars and gain some better ones later. You're gonna have a bad year. I mean, that's business, and I think that they're trying to associate business with like these issues in the wrong fashion. You are running a business, but at the end of the day, if you make your business better, taking a better stance, your business will get better. You will have more support. No one cares about the company who folds who didn't give a shit about anything. You know what I mean? Like, well, goodbye.
And like, further to that point, the longer that you maintain silence or let people believe that it is somehow we're worried about the bottom line, the more that my brain immediately goes to, does your leadership actually support the wrong side of this? Like, are you actually on the wrong side of this? Because I mean, if you're gonna bring it up, like, JB has made some comments that like definitely don't make it seem like he's gonna come out and let PR from that company say something that ends them up being on the right side of moving humanity forward. Like, right. It just, the longer that goes on, the more that it starts to ring hollow in terms of, whatever you end up actually saying, because it starts to plant that seed of like, are y'all racist? Like,
Right, yeah.
Like at what point do you just be like, okay, well, if you're not going to say anything, then like silence is violence, and you're complicit in all of this.
Yeah, I'm not going to
exactly.
say, I'm not going to say that Waterloo, Wisconsin is an extremely diverse area to begin with, but I have also been inside that building many times, and
yeah,
it's bright as hell in there.
You need sunglasses. Yeah, you need sunglasses in there for sure.
Yeah, and you know, and I think that's what companies need to understand. And I love your point, John. Is like, are you ready? Like, if you're not going to get involved, is it because you know, like,
because I think about like, so I lost my job right at the beginning of the pandemic, and then found another position in May, and I ended up in top 5 largest companies in the world. And already at that point in the second week of May, I was getting bi-weekly, so twice a week, not every other week, and I have no idea why they call both of those bi-weekly. I was getting twice a week all company emails to like the 62,000 employees across the globe talking about where they stand on all of these things, and why, like, this is why we have had our diversity initiative for 10 years, and this is why we don't stand for any of this type of language. This is why we've made a point as a company to support these specific causes and not support these specific causes. Like, I got there and I was like, because we're watching all this stuff unfold within the bike industry at that time, and you're seeing bikes, you know, being used by police to hit people with chain rings and stuff like that, and hundreds of billions of dollars, like numbers that I can't even calculate. And it's like, they're clearly not worried about what the bottom line is, because they are making a hard stand that every single person in the company knows where they stand. And it was basically written in the tense of, if you don't like it, doors over there.
You can go. Like, and that's the thing. Hey, if you want to be a bike company and you want to be super racist, I won't say I support you, but go ahead and do it. Like, you know, like, I mean, like,
right.
I mean, do it. Like, why not? Like, I want to know. I think a lot of at least early in the conversation last year, a lot of what I would say is like, dude, I don't really care if you're racist. That's not my job to try to convince you. That sounds like a lot of work. I just want to know who. I want to know who is who. You know, that's all I want to know. I want to know who is who.
Please make all of your bike helmets look pointy and white, and then we're like, we don't ride with those dudes. Those dudes are just not people to hang out with.
Hey, if they show up on the group ride, bro, I got a flat.
Drop more watts than dog watts. We just like, you know, when you get chased by that dog, you're like, the dog. Like, everyone's like, no, those guys showed up. Go.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm gonna turn around. I'm just gonna do it out and back. You know, it's fine. You know, I think we've got to be a lot more overt, and we've got to be a lot more accepting is maybe the wrong choice of words, but just to understand that not everybody is a hero, not everybody is a good guy, and you don't live in a fantasy world, you know, created by Walt Disney. You know, like, there are bad people in this world. You know some of them. You probably know a lot of them, more than you'd want. But you should know who those people are, and you should know how they move. You should know all of these things. I think a lot of people were happy about Trump going away, because they're like, at least people aren't so overt about their racism. I don't like to be surprised by racism.
It was nice.
I do not like racism coming around the corner and surprising me, saying, "Hey, I got you." I'm like, no. I want to know that you're around.
Right, right. I want to see that from 20 feet away. Yeah, but
Exactly.
But also, like, to your point, Walt Disney was an asshole. Like, that dude, talk about racist. Like, that guy was horrible.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so yeah, I think I do think the opinion is split there. Some people just don't want to hear, but I'm just saying, like, yo, like, if we want to get to an endpoint here, you got to know where the target is. And if you don't know where the target is, you're wasting my time. I don't care what side of the argument you're on.
Right.
You know, you're wasting my time if you don't know where the target is. So let's just get to it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been struggling with this and messaging with some folks because, like, I'm trying to find a new bike, right? And John and I want a new bike, and I want a new bike because I don't want to ride the brand that I'm riding right now, right? Like, for a number of reasons. And I got to make that decision, right? And I was messaging with John, and John just looked at me and he's like, he sent me a message. He's like, well, look, the only way you're going to get a bike that you know is like okay in any way is if you go mine the ore yourself and then you make the tubes and then you weld it yourself. And I thought to myself, yeah, except I was an asshole for a while too. So like I thought to myself, I was like, that thing's still not free of like being an asshole at some point in my life, right? So there's like the movement towards change has to be where we have to be, and that movement towards introspection. And it blows my mind, and I think to your point very well, that people are not willing as leaders to double down on progress and the arc bending towards justice as it should, and leaning into that space saying, hey, we got to get there, and the world is going to continue to move there, because no one, I think, if anything, the bike community that is concerned about these things is actually standing up and shouting about them, which is good. For all the garbage comments that end up in the bottom of every comments post on Facebook that any brand makes, like, those are garbage comments. Just ignore them. They don't matter in
they're
the long.
ignoring them already. Like, everybody that's managing all of those social accounts, they're reading them and moving on.
Right. So just make a good decision and then ignore the dentists.
I gotta ask a rhetorical question to anybody who's running a brand here. It's like, think about, like, imagine everybody is on the right side of the conversation, but we still have this problem. I think by not saying anything, it's kind of like a you assume that this problem is going to fix itself. So imagine that you run a business that will not take a stance one way or the other. Ask yourself, so how is the problem going to get fixed then? Right? Like, if everybody's on the right side of the conversation, but you just choose not to say anything, but you are the opportunity provider. You are the thing that people need in their lives, but you just choose to just be there. It's like kind of like having like I've referenced my dad a few times, but it's kind of like having a dad that won't hug you, right? It's just like, where's the passion come from? Where's the care? How are you going to change? And I know brands aren't thinking that they need to change the world, but you are kind of one of the last stops that we need in these conversations. And because the people are talking, the people been talking since since the 1800s, since the 1900s, since the 60s, since the 70s, since the 80s, and now we are here in the kind of like 20s of the 2000s, and we're looking at brands to start moving in a direction, and you're saying, I'll chill. Like, so how are we going to get anywhere? Because we've been talking about this for literally hundreds of years, and now we're asking brands to take some responsibility, and you won't. So how is this going to change?
And that's where I come back to, like, I call it my Chick-fil-A principle. Like, I don't eat Chick-fil-A. Like, I don't shop at Hobby Lobby. Like, they're like, it's small, but like that's, and again, I go back to kind of what Doug was saying. Like, we're both looking for new bikes because we're both on a brand that I don't want, like, to look down at.
I don't want to step on your toes there. One of my best friends is gay. Shout out to Jarrett Hill. He also has an amazing podcast. And I always ask him about Chick-fil-A, and he's like, man, their lemonade is too good. I can't do it.
Believe me, like, I get my fair share of it. Like, even my father-in-law has been on the bandwagon lately. Like, have you had their chicken sandwich? Like, how can you pass that up? I'm like, well, whatever.
I lived in the South in Alabama for 4 years, and like, people would show up at the shop or at the racetrack with, as we called it, Jesus chicken. And it was like, this is lunch. I'm like, this is a real conflict because I'm working my ass off in the sun and I need to eat. And this is what you bring me. I have conflicts with this, right?
Yeah, man, shit. It's going to be hard to give up Chick-fil-A, but I know it's the right thing to do. I commend you.
But it's that, like, if you're not willing to take a stand, you have to be hit in the pocketbook to the point where you either go out of business or it hurts your bottom line enough that you're not doing anything
because then you realize people care,
right?
Like, people actually care, and
right. If we all just keep buying insert brand here that you feel like has done something wrong, there's zero incentive for them to do anything.
Zero. And I've talked about that before. You got to hit them in the pockets. You gotta send a message, and that responsibility does come from the community. But I think a lot of that message has been sent over time. Companies gotta do better than what they're doing now. So.
Yeah, and that, because like, we can only vote as much as we can vote, right? Like, we can only do as much as we can do in those spaces. We got to have the pressure's gotta push in some other way. And I think that's a wild place that we have to like push the industry. But it's like, why is this a wild thing for all of them? Like, why is this?
Why are we having this conversation? Why are we having it over and over and over?
And it keeps happening. Like every time we get into a situation, especially over the past year, whether it is, with Black people being killed by police, or whether it's, the anti-trans laws being passed and LGBTQ people being demonized, or, voting rights, all this stuff, like we're asking people to stand up for us as human beings. And the fact that there is not an emotion tied in the bike industry, a place that prides itself on the emotional feeling and connection to a thing that gives you joy, that there is no desire to actually take care of the joy of the consumer, that it blows my mind and absolutely flabbergasts me that they can't make that leap.
Yeah, and too many old white guys. I think the next generation. I truly believe this for a lot of other spaces that are dealing with these same challenges. Is that my son's 9, so maybe like the generation between me and my son. Hopefully, very optimistic that I want to be optimistic that the fact that like you see a lot more diversity, you see a lot more openness, you see a lot more conversations happening with these younger folks. That when they get to, I mean, we're talking 40 years from now, but when they get to that point of being able to control these companies and make decisions for these brands, that we have already moved to a point where they can, where they're willing to make these stands, they're willing to, affect change, they're willing to represent people. And I would hope in 40 years, even though I would hope in 40 years that we have moved past the conversation of asking brands to take a stance. I do think we're kind of getting there in a sense, because the rest of the people, like the actual people, they do have stances, they do have opinions,
right?
They are willing to talk about it. So.
Right. Yeah. Man, I mean, we're hour and 45, and I feel like
sorry, I talk a lot.
No, what I'm gonna say is like this piece of it. I think Doug and I could go for like another 5 hours.
6-hour podcast.
Yeah, it's
my girlfriend's in Vegas, so whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah. So, but I think that's a great place to just kind of put a pin in this, and then already book you to come again at some point. Because I feel like this is something, just this whole swath of conversation. It's not going to go anywhere. The things that you're doing with Photopace, they're not going to go anywhere. Telling stories, you're going to keep doing it. So I think we're already looking forward to having you come back on the show. But man,
I would love it.
This was such a pleasure.
Yes.
Such a pleasure. So
you.
fun to have you come on the show and talk and tell your stories, share some of who you are. And also thank you for being flexible and rearranging your schedule to make this happen.
Oh, it's all good, man. Yeah, you guys really risked it all. I don't know how many Black people you've had on your show, but like asking a Black person to come on your show for like 2 months ahead of time, and then me actually being able to come on here on time, I was just like, holy shit! This whole week, I was like, I can't wait to get on this show, but I don't even remember what day it is. Like, cause the invite just had my name, so every time I opened my calendar, I would just see my name. I would think it was nothing. But I knew, I was like, something's happening on Wednesday, and I'm going to be there. I've been looking forward to this ever since we chatted, man. So I'm honored to be here. You guys are wonderful, wonderful.
We appreciate it. And like, seriously, it is great, because these are the conversations I think that people need to have with the people in their life, and the people, as we learned from articles, the people outside of their life, and they need to broaden their circle so that they're having these conversations, and they need to challenge themselves to do that. So,
and we've been in the intro the last couple of weeks asking you guys, either the viewers or the listeners, to send us new people that are outside of our specific sphere for this exact purpose. And this was all like started before the bicycling article came out. So it's like, this is so much like an active pursuit for us to continue to do that, not only for ourselves, like selfishly as the people making the show, but also to broaden the scope of the stories that we're getting, and be able to have a conversation about trans rights with Tara, or have a conversation about this stuff with you, because it's like, nobody wants to hear Doug and I talk about our perspective on the plight of Black folks in America. Like, it's
You can talk about the plight of white folks. I don't know what you guys are
There
up to.
ain't no
we don't
plight,
have many
my friend.
plights.
Like,
Nope.
there, like it isn't. It's not a thing. Nope, not at all.
Oh, man. All right. Well,
Start the 100-yard dash on the 50-yard line. It's not. No, it's like, but that is all part of the work that I think that our side is doing in all of this is understanding where that privilege does lie and understanding a lot of the damage that comes in the past that is just, it's hard to wrap your head around but like being able to have these conversations, have them openly, and be able to just be able to have those, to say those hard things and to say the work that needs to be done and admit it out loud. I think that gives a lot of credence to people feeling comfortable being able to do it in their own homes, because those conversations, whether it was having it with dad or you know, Aunt Jane or whoever it is at Thanksgiving about why you can't say that, it takes a lot to get to that point. So man, thank you so much. But we got one more, and you knew this one was coming, because we kind of teed it up for you a little bit. But so you obviously know that our listeners are called the Pebbles. So if there is one thing from today, of all of the things, you know, the whole gymkhana that was this episode, from all of it, if there's one thing that you could have the Pebbles take home from today, what would you like them to take home?
I digested it. I responded to that question, but with the course of the way this conversation went, I mean, honestly, just do the work. It's not that hard. It really isn't. I think I closed out my story by telling people, Martin Luther King didn't beat anything out of anybody. Malcolm X was more militant, but he didn't beat anything out of somebody. Any person that you look up to as like a civil rights leader or an activist, all they're doing is talking.
Yeah.
That's it. So people, the listeners, the viewers, be willing to talk, use your voice. And I said, you can't do one or the other. You can't just text or write your messages on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you put your voice out at. You have to do both. So, go talk to mom and dad or aunt and uncle, but also make sure that people use your social media platform, no matter how many followers you have, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever. And also make sure that those people know where you stand. Because when people get more used to and comfortable seeing that people are having opinions and where people are standing, it enlightens people. I can't tell you how many times somebody has reached out to me that I have no clue who they are and says, like, I just need to hear you say that. And I'm not special in that way. Maybe I have more practice, but I'm not special in that way that I can just say something. I say things at a very like middle school level at most. I don't try to use fancy words. I don't try to be, this orator, with this like colorful vocabulary. I have it, but I don't do that. I try to get the message across for everybody.
Sure.
So don't think that you have to be fancy about this. Just get your message out and say your opinion, and don't be okay with making mistakes. I say things all the time that like I'm expecting somebody to catch, and maybe they think it to themselves and they don't want to approach me about it. But I say things in my messaging all the time where I'm like, I probably shouldn't have said it like that. And if somebody approaches me, I'll acknowledge it. Sure, I made a mistake. You move on from your mistakes. You grow. You should grow from them, but you also move on from your mistakes. Like don't be scared that you're going to make a mistake and somebody's going to slay you. Well, then if you made a mistake that somebody was going to slay you for, then you deserve to get slayed. But move on. If you're trying to be on the right side of the conversation, that's what really matters. You'll learn how to speak. You'll learn how to get your message across. But if you're scared to learn, then I'll just join the other side, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we will wage war against you with our words and our swords,
exactly.
and we will come for you on the other side. This is how this is.
Exactly.
See, just in doing that, you opened up another hour on cancel culture. Like that's just like now we're gonna have to talk about that. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's
book me again. Book me again.
No, we'll have you and Liz Cheney can come and talk about cancel culture, and we can talk about how it worked for her. And we'll just be
Liz is having a rough day today. I don't think Liz cares, but Liz is having a rough day today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she cares that we care that she's having a rough day today.
No.
But you know, and I thought I swear, I thought I'd never say this, but it's the first time I've ever been like, well, Cheney said something decent. Like that was all right. Like, I don't want to just be like, oh, you're just Darth Vader. But like I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. So yeah, I think you're dead on. So and really again, from John and I both really appreciate having you here to share perspectives about some of the current stuff that's going on, and also learn a little bit about your history and the place you've come from. And we certainly look forward to having you back before.
I would love that.
But it is a little bit of time that we have to do the thing that we have to do, like all podcasters, and pay a little bit of the bills. So Pebbles, thank you for being here. All of you old and new, if you've just joined because you're a friend of Christopher and you joined us tonight to check out what's going on in the conversation, we appreciate having you. Please subscribe, engage, click the like button, follow us here, follow us on Twitch, subscribe, do all that jazz, and make sure to head on over to thegravelot.com and become a Patreon supporter today. And if, like we said, you want to become a super awesome friend of the show who will give noogies to, and thank you, send us people that you want to see on the show, friends you have, people you know in your community who are doing good things, who have diverse points of view. We've been really pushing that hard over the past year or so, trying to open up our books from that perspective. And we really just need y'all to send us more folks that you know are doing great work and have great takes on being a person that somehow is tangentially related to bikes. So send them our way.
So in addition to your guys' support, whether it's via Patreon or individual donations, we also encourage you guys to go support these partners that we are getting ready to list now. Go buy their wares, use our discount codes, just go support these people that are helping us bring this thing to you guys each and every week.
First thanks goes out to our good friend Adam at Be Free Ride Bikes Cycling Apparel. They do amazing stuff, do custom team kit, do all that jazz. Everybody I know that has ridden their chamois says these are the best that they have ridden. I agree. Now, that's just my opinion. You can take that for what it's worth, but we love all the stuff that BFRB does. Great custom apparel and a bunch of really awesome looking, regular wares you can buy for your weekday rides or non-race events. Really love all their stuff. Head on over to BFRBcycling.com and make sure to take a look at how they can help you get outfitted or get your entire team outfitted for the upcoming season.
And appropriate for right now, because it's now after 10 o'clock local time, we are powered by the caffeine from Grimper Brothers Coffee. You guys should know by now, go to grimperbrothers.com now. Check out all of their blends. They all have proceeds, or a part of the proceeds go to an individual, whether it's an athlete, whether it's an event, whether it's a cause. So Dan and everybody at Grimper Brothers Coffee is really putting their money where their mouth is in terms of like giving back to the things that they care about. And this coffee is hand selected. It's roasted by hand in Dan's house in small batches and delivered weekly. So you guys are getting the absolute freshest, best coffee that you can ever make in the morning. It is truly the best part of waking up. So go to grimperbrothers.com now and hit up the subscription service, because you will get a free bag of coffee with a 1-year subscription service to Grimper Brothers Coffee.
It gets me every time you do that, because I feel like you've just decided to co-opt their slogan.
I don't, whatever. I don't care. They're big enough. They're not listening. That's fine.
I was going to say that. I don't know if that's legal for you to say that, but that's okay. Most people don't know Folgers at this point. So
it's not written down. Like, I'm not writing it down. It's not on the screen.
It's libel or something. Who knows?
And I'm not singing the jingle, so I feel like we're good. YouTube's not going to snag it.
Is that common license? I'm going to edit that part out, Christopher. You're not allowed to do that. No, we're going to get tagged by YouTube for a DMCA.
Yeah.
Also, a massive thanks to our friend Mitch at BioWheels Fit Studio and Workshop right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, offering you a full host of bike fitting services intended to provide you, the cycling enthusiast, with the most efficient, comfortable, and sustainable bike fit you've ever had. Go check Mitch's stuff out if you're looking for new bikes from awesome brands like Specialized. We know we got a Specialized ambassador on the Outright ambassador on the horn here. Cervelo, a number of other companies. Mitch knows what stock's coming in. Bikes are in short supply. Mitch is keeping tabs on that, and he can make sure you're fit perfectly on that bike. So check out BioWheels Fit Studio if you are in the area.
And we are also supported by the great folks at the Ritual All Natural Skincare, providing not only this shirt, but providing you custom small batch handmade chamois cream using all natural ingredients that is made right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, actually right up the road from Doug and I from where we're recording right now. So it is all locally sourced. And the best part about this is you guys get to pick everything about the chamois cream when you want to order it. So not only get to design the tub, you get to actually pick what it smells like, whether you want it menthol or not, which is what makes it cooling, or Euro for those of you out there who are familiar with it. Not everybody understands that cooling chamois cream is Euro. But that's the best part about it, because it's all handmade, because it's all a small batch. You get to pick everything about it and make it truly, truly custom to you. So if you guys want to learn more about that, get in touch with us, whether it's through all of the channels via the Gravel-Lot or Doug or myself personally, and we will put you in contact with the folks at The Ritual.
Absolutely. And also a massive thanks to our OG sponsor, the Hand Up Gloves. Hand Up doing awesome stuff. Out now with more Gloves for Good, supporting a California trail building folks. I forget exactly which part of California. I have to check their website, but go check them out. Hand Up Gloves, making awesome gloves, and they're doing it for bike, snow, golf even, if that's a thing you do, which I've kind of been doing with my in-laws. It's kind of odd, but fun.
It's middle-aged. It comes at you when you're middle-aged.
It's tough when you're 43. Yes, that's what happens. So, and make sure to go to our link in the show notes and click on that, because this is how you get to apply code Pebble $ at checkout to save yourself 10% off anything you put in your cart. Everything they've got, whether it is jorts or jorts or jorts. If you need jorts, go to Hand Up Gloves and get jorts. 10% off.
So we're back on the jorts
Pebble
again.
$. I'm all about jorts. You know.
Okay. I know. All right. Well, we said it before. We're going to say it again. We love hearing from you guys. So whatever your comments are, good, bad, indifferent, you should interview this person. You should do this ride as a vlog or whatever. Get a hold of us on all of the social media feeds, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, LinkedIn, or you can go to Patreon. Like we're
so like old professional of us.
All of those places. Or if you just want to go to thegravelot.com, you can find all of our content there. You can find all of the Beeline articles. You can find all of the Girls Moving Mountains episodes, all of the new released Bike Shop Show episodes, all of the Pink, Blue, White episodes with Tara Saplavy. All of the things that we are trying to make for you guys to be able to go find, you can find them at thegravelot.com. And we also have a contact page there if you want to get a hold of us there. So there's really not any excuse as to why you can't get in touch with us.
Yeah, figure it out, folks. Just figure it out.
Just, yeah.
Do the work.
Do the work.
It's real easy.
It's not a lot. It's not even a lot of work. Just do the work.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the theme is tonight. Do the
work.
And do the work and get
That's
it home.
our takeaway.
Yeah. So our newer intro and outro music is from Waterboy. Many thanks to him for all the music. Check him out on all the major platforms, or click the show notes link to check out all of his music. Christopher, again, thank you tremendously for being here and devoting some of your day to us. We really appreciate it. It's been awesome having you.
I appreciate it. You guys are professionals. This is not the way I close my show. I just get off.
We're about to do that.
That was amazing.
That's the next step. Pebbles, that is all for this week. So make sure to subscribe, follow, and engage, because as you know, decisions and trails are made by those who show up. So if we don't see you on the trails this week, we'll see you next time. Bye, John.
Peace.
Bye, Doug.
Thank you.